Hi, this is Dale Anderson. Glad to have you with me today. Today we're going to talk about low self-esteem. And let's talk about just plain self-esteem. Self-esteem is your evaluation of your own worth or what you think of yourself. So therefore, if you have low self-esteem, you don't think much of yourself. So we're going to talk a little bit about it and what causes it, what may help it, and why you may have it. Now remember, self-esteem encompasses beliefs about yourself. Self-esteem is both positive and negative evaluations of yourself. And again, they're just evaluations, they're thoughts. They are not facts. These thoughts are influenced by a multitude of things, including parents, peers, friends, enemies, teachers, preachers, social standing, and environment, just to name a few. And I want to really emphasize again that these are thoughts, not facts. In this next section, we're going to talk about influence on you as a person, me as a person. We've all have influences, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. So we'll move on in this section and take a look at all of them. Your parents, God bless them, are a significant influence on your self-esteem and are considered a main force of positive and or negative experiences a child will have. Now we're going to move on to kind of the downer of the program here. We're going to talk about experiences that contribute to low self-esteem. They include being harshly criticized. And I would say not only criticized, but repeatedly criticized really makes for some low self-esteem. Being physically abused. I got a heavy dose of that when I was a child. My dad died when I was about 2 years old, and a couple of years later, my mom remarried. And my stepdad, he was just plain a abusive person. And so I got, I got the old spankings with whatever was handy. If it was a board with a nail in it, I got that. If a chunk of firewood, I got that. And that really is a downer for a child. So, now some of you may or may not have this. It may not apply. But I'm going to talk a little bit about these negative things because if you've got a low self-esteem, now you can start to think, okay, well, yeah, I had some of these things happen to me, and just learning about them can turn a corner for you. Being sexually abused is not only detrimental to a child, but is often not talked about. And if it's not talked about, it's usually not dealt with. And I am not qualified to tell you how to deal with that, but I would advise you to seek some sort of counseling. And if you don't do that, at least be aware that has affected your thoughts since whenever that occurred. I know I know personally, it can last for, about 60 years, okay? And I don't talk about it to this day, but I want you to talk about it if you need to. And I also want you to at least take a note of it and say, okay, this One reason my esteem is what it should be is some of this stuff happened to me. So what is being emotionally abused? It can be all over the place. I know that there are things that affect our emotions. It may not physically hurt us, but emotionally it upsets us. I remember I was supposed to get down there and unload the pickup down for like a half a ton of chicken feed. I had to get out of the pickup, take it down to the chicken coop. Well, my stepdad would start up the old 1949 Ford pickup, and I better be down at the chicken coop by the time he got down there. I remember one time I tried to pretend like I was asleep, and that didn't work very good. And to this day, 1949 Ford makes almost a siren sound when it sucks the air through its grill. And to this day, I can hear a 1949 Ford coming, and it still causes me to kind of pucker up there, and it was very emotional. And you may have something similar. And anyway, that affects our self-esteem, because when I didn't get down there on time, there were consequences. Being ignored. When we're young, we require attention, and even as adults, we require some attention. If we're being ignored, we realize it, and it creates turmoil in us. And that might be like as a child, if they don't choose you to be on their team, that's being ignored. If your teacher doesn't call on you when you know the answer, that's being ignored. And it does affect our self-esteem. Being ridiculed. I have another name for it. It's sort of like being poked fun of, except it's not much fun. Quite often you are ridiculed or poked fun of in front of your peers, in front of other people, and it's very demeaning, and it can't help but lower your self-esteem, because this person is ridiculing you, and usually they are a person that has some sort of power on you. It may be your boss, your teacher, a bully. So just be aware that can affect you. And, you might want to reduce the amount of ridicule that you will accept. Expected to be perfect. I'm not going to dwell on that, because we all tend to want to be perfect, and we know how hard it is to achieve perfection. And matter of fact, it can keep you from trying things. If you have been in a situation where you're expected to be perfect, you just aren't going to do anything too wild in life so that you aren't perfect. Now, I've already related the story about my stepdad not liking my report card because I had all A's except one A minus. And to this day, his statement that I must say this is pretty piss poor still is with me, and that's been 60 years ago anyway. So don't try and be perfect, just do stuff. During the school-aged years, academic achievement affects self-esteem. Children start to notice the difference between themselves and their classmates. They use social comparison to determine if they did better. These comparisons can play an important factor in shaping the child's self-esteem, and the emphasis of positive or negative feelings they have about themselves. Peer influence becomes much more important. Successful relationships among friends are very important. Social acceptance brings about confidence and produces high self-esteem. Rejection from peers and loneliness bring about self-doubts that produce low self-esteem. And yeah, I would extend that to not just peers. Probably where I know really noticed it heavily was the first girlfriend I lost. Talk about rejection. Oh my God. And it was just the worst thing that ever happened in my life. And didn't help my self-esteem any. Adolescents show an increase in self-esteem. A decrease is seen from middle age to old age. I see something coming here. But you know, I work on my self-esteem. I realize I have to think back and give myself credit for my accomplishments in my life. And as you get older, you have, I think, less opportunity to show what you know. So that's to be expected. A person with low self-esteem may show some of the following characteristics. Excessive self-criticism and dissatisfaction are just one of the things that they may exhibit. They may exhibit sensitivity to criticism, excessive indecision, and fear of mistakes. Perfection can lead to frustration when it's not achieved, and here comes low self-esteem. Now here's one of them things that happens to me anyway, that little voice in my head when I'm trying to go to sleep, dwelling or exaggerating past mistakes. And I also exhibit a tension in my muscles, my ankles. My ankles will stiffen up. So I try not to dwell on that, and many times I just get up for a while and go back to bed later, because you don't want to be dwelling on mistakes. And just in general, hostility and general defensiveness and irritability without cause, pessimism, and a general negative outlook. See, where a person sees temporary setbacks as permanent, and individuals with low self-esteem tend to be critical of themselves too. Some low-esteem individuals may depend on approval and praise of others. Some accept themselves if they succeed, but they won't accept themselves if they fail. You should have high esteem. If your esteem is low, it can be difficult to improve your confidence. Just being aware of what creates low or high esteem will help you realize what occurs in your childhood, your environment, and your social settings will give you a place to start your journey to a higher self-esteem.